That was Robert Altman for you. So I'm going to invite out on the stage again Matt Singer, who's the editor and film critic of ScreenCrush.com and a member of the New York Film Critics Circle. He won a Webby Award for his work on the Independent Film Channel's website, ifc.com, and is the author of several books, including Marvel's Spider-Man, From Amazing to Spectacular, and now Opposable Thumbs, How Siskel and Ebert Changed Movies Forever. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife and 2 daughters, and he'll be signing his books in the East Lobby after this talk. Come on out, Matt. I'm also bringing out Professor Todd Rindelman. He's the Director of Film Studies and Professor of Communication at Seattle Pacific University, where he teaches film art, history, and criticism. Film art, history, and criticism, that's how it's punctuated. He is the author of Rule of Thumb, Ebert at the Movies, so these two have dueling books about Siskel and Ebert.
And you have to have a thumb in the title. I think it's a rule, yeah.
And he's an alumnus of the University of Illinois here. He lives in Seattle, Washington. Come out, Professor Todd Rindelman. And this one, I'm mainly going to be the make sure that the audience gets a chance to ask questions. So please have your questions ready. The discussion is going to be between these 2 gentlemen.
Should we just dive in? Watching it today, I was thinking that in a weird way, the film is almost a companion piece or a supplementary piece to the player. I was thinking about the player because of that the movie is in some ways about directing, right? That the Glenn Close character is a director, and dare I say, a bad director. And it made me think about the way that Robert Altman made movies and his directing style, and how he cast the villain of this film essentially as the director. And almost that, but again, a bad director, and almost the anti-Altman in some ways. The way that she domineers and tells everyone what to do, including people in her own family. You know, she directs her own life. She directs the crime scene. She directs everything. And when you would, read interviews and things about Altman, he would always say, he saw himself much more as a collaborator, and he would say, I made this movie, but I didn't make it alone. I made it with all these people, I'm one artist among many artists, and he would solicit, their opinions. And I think that's probably part of the reason actors loved working with him, because he really let them shape their characters and shape their dialogue. And so the Glenn Close character almost stands to me as almost like the how not to be a director in some way. I don't know if I'm completely off base, but that was what I was thinking watching it today.
Definitely, and I think that at this point in Robert Altman's career, he'd had quite a comeback in the 90s, in that this was coming on the heels of Shortcuts and The Player and so forth, and yet this movie is so light to the touch, and those films are much more heavy-handed, that also got a lot of attention and kind of put him back out there on top. But this was a lovely addition to what he had going on in that season, and it's just a delightful Easter comedy, I think. And it also came into theaters about the same time that the very first Ebertfest opened, so in April of '99. So there's a nice
fitting
coming
symmetry.
full circle there. Yeah.
Yes, that's why this film was chosen, because the festival started in 1999, and we gave the audience a choice of about 15 movies to choose from 1999, and this is the one that won the Audience Choice Award.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's easy to see why when you, I mean,
Yeah.
played great. The audience, it's a crowd-pleasing movie.
Yeah, yeah. This was also another sort of colorful chapter in the tragic villains that Glenn Close was specializing in
Yes.
in the season. And it's just wonderful. It's so different than her work in Fatal Attraction and 101 Dalmatians and Dangerous Liaisons and so forth. This was a lovely addition to that group of characters that she made so memorable.
I did think that final scene was like the Glenn Close scene, as she's almost, she's had sort of a break and she's recreating the play in her jail cell. I was like, this is a real Glenn Close scene. She must have been excited when she got to that part of the script.
I was wondering if he had this been written as a play, because it felt very much like a play to me, the whole thing, not just the rehearsing for the church. Altman had he did allow a lot of improvisation on his set. I looked at some of his, the scripts when Roger and I would sit with him and look at it and talk about some of the things that he did. He said that he did not like, even though to me, when you see a film, there is something of the auteur. You know that this large ensemble cast, improvisational acting, almost the quaintness of the dialogue are all, to me, parts of a Robert Altman script, and yet he didn't really like to think of himself as an auteur in that theory, in that sense, because he felt that each of his works were different or stood on their own. But I saw a lot of commonality between like Shortcuts and this and The Player.
Sure, and I mean, certainly when you watch his movies, you see that, it's funny, I was thinking a lot, I don't know if you were, but I was thinking a little about The Teacher's Lounge today watching this movie, and that they're both movies about, crimes, and then what happens out of that. And you see in this film sort of the opposite, in the sense that in The Teacher's Lounge there's so much distrust and what happens when people have this paranoia. And here there's so much about, that what we see is that everyone trusts Willis, that they don't believe he could have done it. I went fishing with him. And and that's something that I also think about with Altman, is that sense of community. It's not just like ensemble films, they're movies about communities. And you really get a sense of a community here, which you do in so many of his great movies, is that he's not just telling one story or one person's story. He's created a whole community. And there was a great line it's not from Roger's review of this movie, but it's from McCabe and Mrs. Miller, where he's talking about sort of, he could be describing this movie, he says it's not a movie where the characters are introduced, they are already here, and they have been here a long time. And that's exactly how you feel watching Cookie's Fortune. It's like, and he doesn't, we're sort of dropped in the middle of it. And you're left to sort of slowly understand how these characters all relate. But they understand each other perfectly, and they know each other perfectly. And I thought that is, again, another thing he can claim he's not an auteur, but when you see his movies, that's something that often you connect with.
Yeah, I mean, the web of relationships just builds and builds. It has such a rich payoff in the final half hour, the last act, and that's attributed to the talent of the performers and the writing as well. Yeah.
Can I tell you one thing? I want to digress for just a second. I actually, when we left the Teacher's Lounge movie last night, how many of you were here for Teacher's Lounge? A lot of you. And remember when we were talking about a trust and the difference, that gap between, 0.999 and 1, and there's just a little bit of doubt. Well, when I left here, I went to get my purse, and my wallet was gone. And stupidly, I had too many things in it, money, credit cards. My daughter's been telling me to get the digital credit cards, get a tag put in it so if something happens, you can find it. And it was just a feeling of my stomach dropped, and we had to call in the police. But I said, I've been coming here for 25 years. I trust these people. I've worked with the backstage crew. I trust them implicitly. The people that I saw back there, you know, one of the publicists, Lee Meltzer, trust him completely. So I said, there's this gap. Something's missing, but there's a gap in the certainty. And there's that doubt, and I don't think it's missing. So we sent somebody back over to the apartment to look all over as the police is taking the information. Everybody was so lovely, so lovely. And I wasn't going to talk about this today, but I am, because you talk about that sense of community. That's what I feel here. You talk about that sense of trust, and like they didn't know that Willis, they said, there's no way he could have done it. Sometimes people think I'm too naive but no, I think people are basically good. And yeah, we found the wallet. Nobody took it.
Oh. That was almost as suspenseful a story as the teacher's lounge, Chaz. I was thinking my laptop is in the back. Maybe I should set up the camera just in case. No, okay.
And so I was telling Michael Barker that story last night, and Michael Barker told me to tell the audience he changed his mind. He thinks she did not take that money in Teacher's Lounge. He said that little bit of doubt is just, he thinks she didn't take the money. Anyway, that's it.
Wow. How do we talk about the movie again now after that? I don't know what to say. That was great.
You know what, I found a lovely line. This was from Joe Morgenstern, who wrote his review for the Wall Street Journal. You shared a quote from Roger here. This was from Joe Morgenstern. He said, Robert Altman's latest movie means to meander, like the town's fishing stream. It loves to ramble, like the blues score that comments on the sporadic action. It cultivates the art of the soulful dawdle. That was lovingly. And I think with that same sense of community, the actors in this film attested to feeling that with each other. I think they were together for about a month and a half, making the film in the small town, and they appeared to feel right at home. Glenn Close said that she rode a bike to work each day, and a real sense of community was built among them. And of course, it's been mentioned that Mr. Altman was famous for improvisation and giving actors freedoms, and they were very drawn to him because of that. Liv Tyler and Chris O'Donnell were very clear that their scenes, their love scenes together, were carefully orchestrated and directed by Altman, that there was nothing left to their decisions, and that they were thankful for that because they didn't want to be asked to have passionate embraces and not exactly know how long that should go or what it should look like. So they were quite happy that he was very directive toward them in their scenes.
The other element, I mean, that's all fascinating, but one other element that I was really thinking about today, watching it again, was the gun case. And the you know, like, it's an important plot device in the movie. But then when I was watching it today, I was really thinking what a lovely symbol it is in the film as well. The door that won't stay closed, and that you know, the case represents, you know, for Cookie, it's her husband, because it was the husband's guns. But then in a larger sense, it's like it sort of stands as all of these secrets in the past that, you know, the door to those secrets won't stay closed. No matter how many times you shut it, it opens back up. And so we really I kept thinking about that at the towards the end of the film, when suddenly there's all these revelations coming out about, it seems like almost every character is related to one another by the end of this movie. But that idea that these secrets have been all kind of hidden and buried, but no matter how hard you try or how much you do that, the door of the gun case will open and the secrets will spill back out. And I thought that was such a, it's important for the case, because why would a robber break the glass if it stays open anyway? But it has an additional sort of purpose in the movie that's really lovely, I thought.
Yeah, I love also how performing in the play, Cora actually gains strength through coming into her performance that's being directed by her sister as well. I love how the movie allows her character to sort of maintain secrets and then make decisions on her own.
Yeah, that's another part that was making me think about the player a little bit, because at the end, I guess this isn't really spoiling The Player, which is also a 30-year-old movie, but at the end of The Player, sort of the film that we've been watching, which is about Hollywood, becomes the movie that they have been making. And we see a scene from like this ridiculous Hollywood film that's been worked on the whole time. And here, again, that scene with Glenn Close at the end, she's almost kind of like, she's now like lost herself into the play that she has been making for the whole film. And it's like this interesting sort of merger of the art and the artist, and the thing we've been watching being made becomes the thing we are watching. And I know Altman had always talked about how much he loved the end of The Player for that reason, that he loved that it, like the meta element of you're watching something being made, and then without even almost fully realizing it at first, you're now watching this, the film within the film. And here, not quite the same, but I think there's a certain quality of that where she's now like almost become consumed by this thing that she was working on the whole time. Where she's also, of course, another sign that she's not a great collaborator or director. She's put her name below Oscar Wilde's. Another, to me, that's another. It's a great joke. Salome by Oscar Wilde and Camille Dixon. But again, it also speaks to that that's not really the sort of artist that I think Altman would have liked to be, where he was, he would insist, I'm not an auteur and this sort of thing. He wouldn't have put his name probably on that sign.
Do you have a favorite Altman film? Both. What's your favorite?
The one that I always, there's the obvious ones, but the one that I really like that isn't maybe in that top tier is the film California Split, about the gamblers, Elliot Gould and George Segal. I love that movie because I actually rewatched it again recently, and there is some. It's such a different film, but there are some similarities in, again, that sense of community, because through these characters you meet this whole sort of world of these kind of addicted gamblers. So it's basically about these two guys who kind of meet by chance at a poker game, and then they become sort of friends almost overnight, and it's because they're both basically gambling addicts, whether they want to admit it or not. And the Elliot Gould character is sort of in very deep, and the George Segal character we see he's got maybe one hand left on a real life, and his fingers are slowly slipping off. He's going to lose his job as a writer and all these sorts of things. And you see over the course of the film how their relationship is all driven by this about gambling. And I don't want to spoil that movie either, but one of the things it does really well is it has a magical way of sort of giving the characters exactly what they want and showing how hollow that victory is. And it totally defies all of your expectations, which is another, I think, an Altman hallmark. It's like whatever you think the movie is going to be, it's not going to be that. And this movie certainly just constantly is upending your expectations. When you meet characters, you think they're going to, if you don't know what it's about and just the basic premise, maybe this person is going to kill Cookie for her fortune, or maybe this character is going to have to put together the mystery. Who's going to solve this mystery? We almost know more than the characters because we know what happened, and so many of them are trying to puzzle it together. And then at the end, the mystery is resolved with like 15, 20 minutes left, and then we're finding out all of these other mysteries that we didn't even know anything about the family and all those sorts of things. So to me, like that's something I always enjoy about an Altman movie. Is like you go in, even if you think you know what it's going to be, it will never. He will always upend what you expected. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
I really appreciate McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and that's just a gorgeous film in the Pacific Northwest that's looking at early settlers trying to make a way for themselves and living hand to mouth in many cases. That's Warren Beatty and Julie Christie are the stars of that film, and that's just a really sumptuous movie about grim times in America. Oh, but this is the most delightful Altman film to me, honestly. I really just think it's just a perfect film, and the humor just builds and builds, and it's just a lovely addition to his body of work.
Should we go out to the audience now? Do we have the microphones set up and have people ready to ask questions?
From the balcony in the top, in the center.
Balcony center, okay.
As I was watching the film, I noticed a connection with a previous film we watched that Ida B. Wells was from that town. And I noticed the sign about yellow fever, and her parents were killed that year with yellow fever. And in 2024, watching a film set in Mississippi about a black man falsely accused for a crime, it just has me thinking about the racial politics of the film, or lack thereof. If the film was made today, how would it be different? And as I thought about it, Ida B. Wells, I mean, she's part of the Great Migration from Mississippi. And so I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts about those connections, the historical context of the film when it was made, or any connections with Ida B. Wells. And part of me wishes that would have been highlighted some in the film, but I realize it was made a while ago. So,
You know, I was wondering yesterday, I knew when I saw Holly Springs that we had seen another movie with Holly Springs, Mississippi, but I didn't realize that it was the Ida B. Wells movie. Just like yesterday, did anybody notice in the movies we saw the Picasso, the sculpture of the Picasso in Chicago in 2 different movies on that day. So thank you for reminding us that it was Holly Springs, Mississippi, where Ida B. Wells was born, and that she had to leave because of, they talked about yellow fever. But the racial politics, so different, of course, in what, Robert Altman said that he liked actually grappling with issues of race. He did, what is the movie with Harry Belafonte in Kansas City? Yes. He liked making movies about race, music in his movies, and I think that the fact that the racial, I don't think that he did any really specific, he had to do some degree of research about the town and the racial makeup of that family, but I think that the racial part of it was just very, very mild, very gentle in this movie.
Yeah, Altman was aware that the town was, he described as 50% Caucasian and 50% African American, and so he was intentionally wanting it to be centered in a place that had natural diversity in it, in that sense. And so I think that comes through subtly, in the film, that people love each other and are there for one another. Even
And are related to each other,
yeah,
actually.
Right,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, next question from right here, right in front.
Hi, if I was watching this alone or at home or whatever, I would ponder it and let it go. But since I have the access to experts, I'd like to get an answer from you. At the ending, do you think, I don't remember the character name, Julianne Moore was trying to frame Glenn Close and bringing all this out? And why did Glenn Close get killed off at the very end and not have to go through suffering for what she's did.
Did she get, I didn't take it to mean that she was sort of killed off, but I did think there was a sort of poetic.
She's coping.
Right, yes. I mean, there is a sort of a poetic justice to the fact that, yes, she does sort of, she winds up with the pillow over her face and the hand in the same position.
Right.
So I do think that was absolutely intentional. And I certainly take it to, you know, what we learn about the Julianne Moore character is that she has sort of spent her life at the mercy of this, again, the bad director. She's been directed by this woman her whole life, including all of the stuff with Liv Tyler's character. And so that was sort of, she finally had her opportunity to get out from under her. And I thought that, yeah, it's all, absolutely, then, you know, that smile, that very small little smile on her face at the end, I thought was really beautifully played by her as well.
Right, that's her Mona Lisa grin, and she's finally kind of taking charge of her future. I think the scene where they're on their knees and Glenn Close is praying is instructive as well, because Cora doesn't get to pray at all when they're together, and she assumes that she won't speak in that. But what's also intriguing is that Glenn Close's character believes her own, like, there's no audience there except for the two sisters when she's rehearsing all this passive-aggressive, ideas about their family and community and so forth. And that tells me that she really does believe she's internally consistent and that she believes her own publicity because there's no audience there for her to be playing to in any way. But yes, I think that she's very aware that she's framing her sister. And I don't know that that'll go on forever, but that moment seems satisfying.
Microphone.
I have a question here on House Right.
My question is also about the ending. It's the scene with Camille, and I read that as her taking her own life, that I know you said she was in the scene and everything, but everything she'd done had unraveled. Like, here she was, it wasn't gonna work anymore. And because she was left motionless, because she put the pillow on her face, the last thing, she was completely motionless. So I read that as a suicide, and I read that as also her having done the thing she thought was so disgraceful, and now she could no longer hold up, like, this idea she had, everything was gone. Everything she had, everything she'd built had fallen apart. And I wondered whether you all read any of that, because that's what I thought instantly. It's my first time seeing the film, so I haven't rewatched any of it.
Can a person really commit suicide by putting a pillow over their own face? I don't think so. I think your instinct to survive or to breathe would be so strong your hand would fall away first. But I mean, I shouldn't even bring that up because it's only a movie. But
I think that motif is there. It's absolutely there. I just never
Don't have a lot of
I'm not comfortable going
experience
that
in these
far.
matters, admittedly.
Yeah.
But I think that you're supposed to be thinking about that either way, and I think exactly what you're seeing, and the fact that that Altman is making that comparison to what's happened, and exactly what you're saying about that she was so insistent on no one only crazy people would do this, and no one that absolutely that is all sort of the motif, and it's done very deliberately and quite poetically, I find, and I like that you're saying like she does this even when there's no audience.
Yeah. There's also a lovely dangling hand motif in tomorrow morning's film, the Hitchcock Blackmail. So if you'd like to see that extended in a creative way, then you need to come out.
So many connections between these movies. I love it.
Question from the balcony in the center.
Hi, this is my first time seeing this film, but my father and my sister who were with me saw it back in 1999 here. So my question is about the title of the film. So to me, the title seems, even though I know there's a fortune involved, but fortune can mean different things. So to me, the title is a little off. I'm not sure I would have titled it this, but would like your thoughts on that.
I was thinking about the title today too, because it's not like she has the house that Glenn Close's character wants, but it's not like she's, sitting on millions of dollars that might get, that's being fought over. But today what I was really thinking about in regards to the title was the idea of fortune as luck. And the other thing that the symbol or the motif that popped up a lot that I noticed today a lot was, obviously it's Easter weekend, so there's a lot of Easter, but there's a lot of bunny rabbits. And rabbits obviously connect to Easter, but they also connect to luck. Like I think of a lucky rabbit's foot and that sort of thing. And so the idea of all these bunnies, I think in some ways is a reflection of that, perhaps. The idea of, Cookie's fortune, it's like, in order for Willis to be cleared of this, he could look pretty guilty. There's a lot of evidence that points in his direction, which is why he winds up in the cell. So to sort of, for him to be freed, there will need to be some luck there, essentially. And so that was what I agree that it is in a way, I don't know if I would say it's misleading, but it's not like, it's not so directly on the nose to the subject of the movie. And again, maybe that is like an Altman, I'm going to surprise you, because you hear that and you think people are going to be fighting over millions of dollars or something. And that's not what the movie is about at all.
And I've always kind of taken that as sort of the richness of Cookie's life, because she has enduring relationships, and her husband is still very much a part of her, and Willis is a part of her, continuity. So I just think of it kind of the depth of the people that she loves and that she chooses to be around as much as possible.
Okay, I have another question here to your right about Mid-House.
Good morning, gentlemen. I have two things to ask you, and you can take either one. The first one was, I love the casting. Can you talk about sort of Altman and casting, particularly people like Niecy Nash and Rufus Thomas, these sort of really small roles, maybe have one or two scenes, but they are such an integral part of the story. So I was wondering if Altman used sort of the same casting director, or he did the casting himself, if you could share some of that. And also the other part is the sort of the playful sexual energy that sort of runs through the film, particularly where, people are sort of glancing at each other, and, you have the overt with the young couple, but you also have it sort of played out throughout the film. So that's I guess it's a question.
I've heard Niecy Nash, this was her first film. She was mostly in television prior to this, and she said that Mr. Altman had seen her on video in some form and had just liked what he was seeing and reached out to her personally, which tells me that he was just very aware of people that were doing any kind of work. It wasn't just movie stars and so forth that he was interested in reaching out to. And she said that she couldn't believe that she was being contacted by Mr. Altman, and she said she had two questions. Does her character have to curse, and does she have to take any of her clothes off? And he said no and no, and she said, then I'm on board.
In terms of the second part, the sort of sexual energy, however you described it, I mean, what I enjoy about it is that, I think it works so nicely with the Glenn Close character and the plot about that we gradually come to understand about what, her past and her connection to Liv Tyler and all of that, and that she has this very, uptight, let's say, attitude towards these things, and that the movie has a different attitude, and that it presents these things as fun, and like just watching it today, the audience is laughing at those. They work so beautifully. They're light and fun. Like the scene with Chris O'Donnell's his belt getting caught in the door. I mean it's so it's like a screwball comedy or something in the middle of this movie, and I just thought that, I don't know, again, with the Glenn Close character representing, the bad director. I just thought that placing that stuff into the movie almost in opposition of her and treating it in that way, I thought was very effective.
One more question,
Sure.
and then we're going to lunch.
I have a
Oh,
question
and
here.
you're going to do your book signing
Yes, I will
in the
be
East
signing
Lobby.
books. Yes, if anyone wants a copy
Where's
of
the
Opposable
microphone?
Thumbs.
The last question is here on Main Floor
Yes.
Center.
Oh, yes.
Hi, good morning. Just in revisiting the ending, it's a great character-driven screenplay. And thinking of this is the first time I've ever seen the film, and in watching the investigator in the police office reading the facts and getting all of that information that was kind of come up about Liv Taylor's character and her birth and the transfusion and all such as that, then we come to the end of the film, which we spoke about in a couple of different directions, but panning off of that pillow down her arm and coming to her finger and her hand made me think blood clot. I mean, do I have the right thing going on there as far as what was exposed by the investigator? Because I haven't only seen this the first time. I just felt like that's how she died, blood clot.
I was thinking about sort of her hand being in the same position as Cookie's hand earlier in the film, but I don't know, Todd, you had a different.
It's thought-provoking. I have not gone there before. I
didn't
never
think so,
interpreted in that to
Yeah,
that degree
but,
when
No, I hadn't before, but now I want to go rewatch the movie another time and see that scene again.
Okay, thank you. Let's meet in the East Lobby for book signing, and we'll see you after lunch for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Thank you, guys. It's funny. Some of Altman's, I think I enjoy Altman's